I had always been drawn to the history and charm of the European countryside. So when I received an invitation to visit an old college friend in the small village of Blyton, nestled in the English countryside, I jumped at the chance. The village was quaint, with cobblestone streets, ancient stone houses, and a sense of timelessness that was both enchanting and eerie. My friend, Daniel, had recently inherited an old manor from a distant relative and had invited me to stay with him for a few weeks. The manor was grand, with ivy-covered walls and tall, narrow windows that seemed to gaze down at me like watchful eyes. Inside, it was a labyrinth of dark wood paneling, dusty chandeliers, and rooms filled with antique furniture. It was beautiful, but there was an unsettling atmosphere that I couldn't shake. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves held secrets long forgotten. Daniel welcomed me warmly and gave me a tour of the manor. He seemed excited to have a guest, but there was a subtle tension in his demeanor that I couldn't quite place. He showed me to my room, a large ornate space with a four-poster bed and a fireplace. As I unpacked my things, I noticed a peculiar painting above the mantel. It depicted a young woman in a white dress, her eyes haunting and sorrowful. I felt a chill run down my spine as I looked at her, as if she were watching me. That night, as I lay in bed, I found it difficult to sleep. The manor was silent, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the distant hoot of an owl. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of the painting and the unsettling atmosphere. Eventually, I drifted off into a restless sleep. I dreamt of the woman in the painting. She stood in the middle of a dark forest, her white dress glowing in the moonlight. She was weeping, her tears glistening like diamonds. As I approached her, she looked up, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. She reached out to me, her hand cold and clammy. I woke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon through the window. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. The dream felt so real, so vivid. I decided to get up and explore the manor, hoping to clear my mind. As I wandered through the dimly lit halls, I felt as though I were being watched. The feeling grew stronger as I approached a door at the end of the corridor. It was slightly ajar, and I could see a faint light coming from within. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small, with a single window overlooking the garden. In the center of the room was a large, wooden chest, its surface covered in dust. I felt an inexplicable urge to open it. As I lifted the heavy lid, a cloud of dust billowed up, causing me to cough. Inside the chest were old letters, photographs, and a diary. I picked up the diary, its leather cover worn and cracked. The diary belonged to the woman in the painting. Her name was Eleanor, and she had lived in the manor over a century ago. Her entries spoke of a love affair with a man named Thomas, who had mysteriously disappeared. She wrote of her grief and despair, and how she felt a dark presence in the manor. The final entry was dated the day before her own disappearance. She wrote of a dream she had, in which Thomas had come to her, urging her to join him in the forest. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor and her tragic story. I spent hours reading through her diary and the letters, piecing together her life and the events leading up to her disappearance. The more I read, the more I felt connected to her, as if her spirit were reaching out to me. I began to notice strange occurrences around the manor. Doors would open and close on their own. Cold drafts would sweep through the rooms, and I would often hear faint whispers in the dead of night. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace, I felt a sudden chill. The flames flickered and dimmed, and I saw a shadow move across the wall. I turned to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with sorrow. She mouthed something, but no sound came out. She pointed towards the window, and then she was gone. I knew I had to follow her to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, I made my way to the forest behind the manor. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with mist, and the ground was soft and damp beneath my feet. I followed a narrow path that wound through the trees, guided by an unseen force. As I ventured deeper into the forest, I felt a growing sense of unease. The trees seemed to close in around me, and the silence was deafening. I came to a clearing where I saw a small, dilapidated cabin. The door was hanging off its hinges, and the windows were shattered. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay. I swept my flashlight across the room, illuminating the tattered remains of furniture and the walls covered in peeling wallpaper. In the center of the room was a large, wooden table, and on it lay a book, its cover marked with strange symbols. I picked it up, and as I opened it, I felt a wave of cold wash over me. The book was filled with accounts of rituals and incantations, written in a language I couldn't understand. But one page caught my eye. It was a drawing of the same symbol I had seen on the cover, and beneath it was a passage in English. It spoke of a curse placed on the manor, a darkness that would claim the souls of those who dwelled within its walls. The only way to break the curse was to find the source of the darkness and destroy it. I knew I had to find the source of the curse, the darkness that had claimed Eleanor and so many others. I returned to the manor, determined to uncover the truth. I spent hours searching through the old letters and diaries, looking for any clues that might lead me to the source. It was then that I found a hidden compartment in Eleanor's diary. Inside was a small silver locket, engraved with the same symbol from the book. I felt a sudden rush of energy as I held the locket. It was warm to the touch, and I could feel a faint pulsing within it. I knew this was the key to breaking the curse. I had to return to the forest, to the cabin, and use the locket to destroy the source of the darkness. That night, I made my way back to the forest. The mist was thicker than before, and the path seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied logic. I reached the cabin, the locket clutched tightly in my hand. As I stepped inside, I felt the temperature drop. The air was thick with a palpable sense of malevolence. I placed the locket on the table, and as I did, the room seemed to come alive. Shadows danced on the walls, and a low, guttural growl filled the air. I could feel the darkness closing in around me, suffocating me. But I stood my ground, focusing all my energy on the locket. I chanted the words from the book, hoping to break the curse. As I spoke the final words, the darkness seemed to implode, drawing itself into the locket. The air cleared, and the oppressive weight lifted. I felt a sense of peace, of calm. I had done it. I had broken the curse. I returned to the manor, feeling a sense of triumph. But as I entered the foyer, I saw Eleanor standing at the top of the stairs. She smiled a sad, knowing smile. In that moment, I realized the truth. The curse was never about the manor or the darkness within it. It was about me. I was the source of the darkness, my own fears and regrets manifesting in the form of the curse. The locket had absorbed my darkness, my guilt, and now I was free. But Eleanor was still trapped, her soul bound to the manor. I had broken the curse for myself, but not for her. I left the manor the next day, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I had freed myself from the darkness, but at a cost. Eleanor's fate remained unchanged, her soul forever bound to the manor. As I drove away, I glanced back at the old house, its windows reflecting the morning sun. I knew I would never forget my time there, the experiences that had changed me forever. and as I looked into the rearview mirror, I saw Eleanor's face. Her eyes filled with sorrow and a hint of hope. She would always be a part of me, a reminder of the darkness we all carry within us. And I knew that, no matter where I went, the shadows would always be there, watching, waiting, a silent testament to the secrets we keep buried deep within our souls. Moving to a new city always brings a mix of excitement and anxiety. When I got the offer to transfer from the Toronto office to the New York branch, I jumped at the chance. I had always been enamored with the city that never sleeps, its pulsating energy, the endless possibilities. I found a modest apartment in the Upper West Side, a stone's throw from Central Park. It was an old building, built in the early 1900s, with creaky wooden floors and antique fixtures. It had character, a stark contrast to the modern condos I was used to. My first night in the apartment was uneventful, save for the typical sounds of the city. Sirens, honking, the occasional shout. Felt alive, vibrant. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to notice something peculiar. Every night, around 2 a.m., I would wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. It was always the same, slow, deliberate, almost methodical. At first, I dismissed it as a neighbor with a late-night schedule. But it persisted night after night, always at the same time. Curiosity got the better of me. One night, I decided to investigate. I stood by my door, waiting for the clock to strike 2 a.m. As if on cue, the footsteps started. I slowly opened the door, peeking into the dimly lit hallway. There was no one there, yet the footsteps continued, echoing through the narrow corridor. I stepped out, the wooden floor creaking beneath my feet, and followed the sound. It led me to the end of the hallway, to a door I hadn't noticed before. It was an old, heavy door, marked with peeling paint and a rusty handle. I tried the handle, but it was locked. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear anything beyond it. There was nothing but an eerie silence. The footsteps had stopped. A chill ran down my spine as I returned to my apartment, my mind racing with questions. The next day, I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Klein, about the door. She was an elderly woman, having lived in the building for over 50 years. Her eyes clouded with a mixture of fear and sadness as I mentioned it. She told me it was the door to the basement, a place long abandoned and forgotten. According to her, strange things had happened there years ago. People disappeared, noises were heard, but no one could explain it. The landlord had it sealed off, hoping to put an end to the disturbances. Despite her warnings, my curiosity only grew. I needed to know what was behind that door, what was causing the footsteps. I purchased a set of lock-picking tools online, determined to uncover the truth. A week later, armed with my new tools, I approached the door at 2 a.m. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled with the lock. After what felt like an eternity, the lock clicked open. I pushed the door, and it creaked on its hinges, revealing a dark, musty staircase leading down into the depths of the building. The air was thick with dust, and a damp, moldy smell filled my nostrils. I descended the stairs, each step echoing in the silence. At the bottom, I found myself in a large, open space. Old furniture, covered in white sheets, was scattered around. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books and old trinkets. It looked like a storage area, forgotten and neglected, but something felt off. The air was heavy, oppressive, as if the very walls held secrets they were unwilling to reveal. As I explored the basement, I stumbled upon a small door at the far end of the room. It was ajar, a faint light seeping through the crack. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was small, almost like a closet. On the floor, in the center of the room, was a large, ornate mirror. It was covered in dust and grime, but I could see my reflection faintly. I felt a strange compulsion to clean the mirror. I wiped away the dust with my sleeve, revealing a beautifully crafted frame, adorned with intricate designs. As I stared into the mirror, I noticed something odd. My reflection wasn't quite right. There was a delay, a slight lag in its movements. I raised my hand, and my reflection followed, but a second too late. A sense of dread washed over me. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mirror. Felt like it was drawing me in, pulling me into its depths. I backed away, my heart racing, and left the basement, slamming the door behind me. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror. I dreamed about it, saw it in my mind's eye whenever I closed my eyes. Consumed me. I started spending more time in the basement, staring into the mirror, trying to understand its power. It felt like it was alive, watching me, waiting for something. I began to notice changes in my reflection. At first, they were subtle, a flicker of movement, a shift in the eyes, but they grew more pronounced. My reflection would smile when I didn't, frown when I was calm. It mimicked my actions, but with a sinister edge. Felt like it was mocking me, taunting me. One night, as I stood before the mirror, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My reflection moved on its own. It reached out, placing its hand against the glass. I could feel the cold, smooth surface beneath my own hand. It smiled, a twisted, malevolent grin, and I knew, in that moment, that I was not alone. The mirror was a portal, a gateway to another realm, and my reflection was trying to cross over. I stumbled back, fear gripping my heart. I had to destroy the mirror, break its hold over me. I grabbed a nearby chair and swung it at the glass with all my strength. The mirror shattered, pieces of glass flying in all directions. But as the shards fell, I saw my reflection in each one, grinning up at me, still alive, still watching. In the days that followed, the sense of being watched never left me. I could feel eyes on me wherever I went, in my apartment, on the street, even at work. I avoided mirrors, reflections, anything that could show my face. But it didn't matter. The presence was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. I confided in Mrs. Klein, desperate for answers. She listened, her face pale with fear. She told me that the mirror was cursed, a relic from a time long forgotten. It had claimed many lives, driving its victims to madness. There was no escaping it. I started to lose touch with reality. The line between dream and waking life blurred. I would see my reflection in windows, in puddles, always smiling that twisted grin. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My life became a waking nightmare. I knew I had to leave, to get away from the apartment, from the city. But it was too late. The presence was everywhere. Followed me, haunted me. I could feel it growing stronger, feeding off my fear. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own mind. One night, as I lay in bed, the footsteps returned. They were louder, more insistent. I could hear them outside my door, pacing back and forth. I knew it was my reflection, come to claim me. I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I closed my eyes, hoping it would go away. But when I opened them, I was no longer in my apartment. I was standing in the basement, before the shattered mirror. My reflection stood before me, whole and intact. It reached out, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. "I've been waiting for you," it whispered, its voice echoing in my mind. In that moment, I realized the truth. The mirror had never been broken. It was a part of me, a manifestation of my darkest fears. I had been running from myself, from the darkness within. And now there was no escape. As I stared into the mirror, I saw my reflection for what it truly was. A twisted, malevolent version of myself. It smiled, and I felt a cold, creeping dread. I knew in that moment that I was lost. The mirror had claimed me, consumed me. There was no escape from its grasp. I watched in horror as my reflection stepped out of the mirror, merging with me. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I became one with the mirror, a prisoner in its depths. Now, as I sit here, trapped in this twisted reflection, I can only watch as it takes my place in the world. It smiles, a twisted grin, and I know it will continue the cycle, claiming more victims, feeding off their fear. And so I wait, waiting for the next soul to fall into its trap. For the mirror is never satisfied, always hungry, always watching, and it will never let me go. As I finish recounting my story, I realize the horrifying truth. The footsteps, the mirror, the reflection, it was all a manifestation of my own mind. I had been trapped in a mental asylum for years, my mind creating a twisted reality to cope with the horrors of my past. The apartment, the mirror, the reflection, it was all in my head. The real horror was not the mirror, but my own fractured mind, forever lost in its own darkness. Thank you for watching our new scary stories. We hope you enjoyed it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. For more stories inspired by real events or chilling fictional tales, click on the video appearing on your screen now or explore our other horror stories playlist. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling narratives. And remember, are you sure the darkness within you isn't watching, waiting for the right moment to escape?